Hey, loves, you're listening to the Be Well, Beautiful People podcast, the show that inspires you to live your best joy filled life by centering healing and liberation above all. I'm your host, Demarra West, author of Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy. It is a sheer privilege to be with you all in sacred space. Today's episode is part of our Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series, which is sponsored by the Love Building, H&B Services, and the Lit Bar. We're highlighting incredible Detroit leaders who have used their trauma as a driver towards transformative work in our community and beyond. My hope is these conversations inspire you to step fully into your God-given power so that you can discover or further ignite your healing journey, which ultimately helps to heal the world. A growing body of research points to the beneficial effects that exposure to the natural world has on our overall health, reducing stress and promoting healing. Access to green spaces in cities has been linked to longer and healthier lives in the elderly and improvements in early years of development. This is why I'm so excited to have Audra Carson here with me in the Love Building studio. She's an environmentalist, a Mother Earth healer, a chief beautification strategist, a CEO, and a lover of all things Detroit. She's been at the forefront of environmental justice since 2009 when she founded D-Tread as a solution to tire waste and blight that plagues urban and rural communities around the globe. Currently, Audra is CEO of Izzie Global, which was named in the honor of her beautiful mother. It provides subscription strategic beautification services, which addresses the need for climate action, sustainability, and beautification for community corridors, commercial campuses, along with other essential environmental services. Today, we're going to dive into how Audra's personal journey, including the challenges that she has faced as a woman in environmental justice, has shaped her mission to create clean, beautiful, and uplifting neighborhoods in Detroit and beyond. But before I do that, let's ground in this quote by Amit Ray, who said, "Looking at beauty in this world is the first step of purifying the mind." And on that note, let's get into this conversation, which is sure to purify and to edify us. Audra, my sister, I am so glad that you are here.
Thank you so much, my dear sister. When we met, it was an immediate connection, and I'm grateful for you to have me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. I knew instantly that you had to be on this lineup. Your words impacted me so deeply. And I know that that's going to be the case today. So you were literally just honored for the amazing work that you do. And, there's this universal law that says that when we work, there's a payoff. And even though we may not be looking to be edified and to be seen in the ways that the world will see us when we're doing really beautiful work, you got a pretty high honor recently. Let's start with talking about that.
Yes. So thank you so much for allowing me to start with that particular award. So Mike and Laura at Other Work Studios, they brought me onto their design team. I appreciate them for the wisdom in doing that. And so the project is a senior housing project in Northwest Detroit, 5-acre site, former location of an elementary school. And to be honored by the American Institute of Architects for this award. We took a wonderful approach to uplift the voices of legacy Detroiters. In all my work, first I want to make sure that I'm allowing myself to be guided by God, Most High, and secondly, the approval of my elders. And so to be in community and lead the elders in dreaming what their future could look like. For them to thrive, not only age in place, but thrive in place, is an incredible honor. And then to be awarded by a prestigious organization like the American Institute of Architects is just otherworldly and mind-blowing, and I'm humble and grateful.
Yeah. I'm sure that recognition went well beyond your wildest dreams.
Yes.
And I always use this quote in my work that there's still more, right? There's more that we haven't conceived yet, more that we want, more relationships to be built, more money to be made. And when we have an abundance mindset, which is so connected to our ability to live well, we can always be rest assured that more is available to us. So I'm excited about whatever that more is going to look like. And so let's get into some of these really, really important questions. We've got some deep explorations today.
Yes.
So you've been at the forefront of environmental justice since 2009. That's a really, really long time. And we would love to hear, starting with D-Tread, what inspired you to be in this space, and knowing that blight, right, was a huge driver and it's a huge focal point in your work. How has that grown into, that initial inspiration grown into the broader mission of Izzie Global?
Wow. So now take into consideration when I was called to do this work, I was working corporate. Right?
Wow.
I had been in the corporate environment for maybe 15, 20 years, right? And so it had taken people, off their square to watch me, walk this thing out, right? So I was coming from my corporate job. I would go see my parents on a regular basis, maybe 4 to 5 times a week, right? So I'm coming from, a suburb or my condo in Midtown. And so I started to see what people were doing with this form of waste, tires. So the way that I would maneuver to get to my parents' home, I started seeing this, people just dumping tires by the hundreds. And it baffled me, like, what is really going on? And the level of disrespect to take these things that are toxic and potentially catastrophic if they are to be engulfed in flames. To dump them behind communities where people live, right? And so around the same time, I saw an episode of HGTV. This was when HGTV was just starting out, burgeoning. And so this guy chopped up tires, and it looked like chopped up tires. It didn't look like mulch. It looked like chopped up tires, but he used it as mulch. And so those two things, combusted in my mind. It's like, wow, I'm from Detroit, motor capital of the world. I can make mulch, right? And so not understanding what I didn't know, right? And so it started me on this journey of, I'm considered an expert as it relates to tire waste in urban environments. I've made connections with people, Budapest, Hungary, Berlin, that know of me and my desire to do this work. And so just me, right? Ali and Izzie's baby girl, right? Wanting to do this work. And I just kept going, right? In becoming an expert, there's some things that I found out, right? So these tires in our community, when you get water in the ring of a tire, the only way that water can get out is if that tire is cut. So that water stays and it attracts rodents and insects. Those insects, rodents can, carry potential disease and that sort of thing, right? As I mentioned before, the potential for catastrophe if these tires are to become inflamed, right? And so it's a photo of me in the lobby of the Green Garage. I'm standing on a pile of tires. It's approximately 10,000 tires. In a neighborhood, 7 Mile and Van Dyke. This is not, somewhere at the far corners of the city. This was in the middle of an East Side neighborhood.
And 10,000 tires were acquired from this very small, somewhat of a small radius of the Detroit community.
Right. And so when we first looked at the tires, it probably was 30,000 tires. And so when the photo was taken, it was 10,000 tires, but attention been made to, remove those tires, but they had been there for years, right? That's one pile. So some things I learned. So in traveling to my parents' home, and these tires would move from like corner to corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, what's going on? So there was a sub industry, right? So it was people who were going through
right?
Yeah.
And I think I'm hearing you say, like, let's celebrate innovation, but let's make sure that we're doing it in a way that's not going to do harm to the people, that's not going to do harm to community.
Right.
And that's exactly what you manifested through your business. And what I love about your story is that for so many of us, we have these moments when we feel inspired, right? You didn't have to know about all of the logistics and the systems and the knowledge came later, but you knew in that moment, you paid attention enough to say, ooh, I wonder what this connection is about. And that spurred you to be known across the globe for the work that you're doing and to be honored the way that you are, just simply because you wanted to do something to address the problem and to do it in ways that was not going to harm the people or the beautiful planet that we get the opportunity to live in.
Right.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I learned something, because D-Tread, the goal of D-Tread was to be a world-class tire processing facility using pyrolysis, which is, in the quick way to describe it, is microwaving the tire. I needed $10 million of investment. I was unable to get that. I was hurt, broken, embarrassed that I was not able to what I thought was, reach the goal. And yet I kept going, and we'll talk about
yes. We plan and God laughs.
that part.
Right? And I think that if we're in a space of knowing that life is always unfolding for us, that even in these moments of devastation, even in these moments when it doesn't turn out the way that we thought it was, that we are still being guided.
Yes.
We are still being guided. And so one of the lessons in this is that we can't be too attached to the goal, right? Because the goal might not be the ultimate goal. And one of the abundance principles is that we don't really have to ask God for anything. God, universe, source, creator. We can sit back and let the magic of life unfold. And there's asking in everything. There's asking in every thought. There's asking in every conversation. There's asking in every time that we sit down in when we're out in nature, when we're journaling. And so I love to hear you talk about what other people would have perceived as failure, but a recognition that you are actually being guided to be exactly where you are right now. And you are still being guided. We all are.
Yes.
We all are.
Yes. And when we continue this conversation, the unfolding, we'll be able to tell the unfolding of how all of this is taking me to a global.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait till we do that. All right. So before we do that, you have faced significant barriers as a Black woman in STEM and environmental justice in general. Both of these industries are, the work that you're doing is very white male dominated. And so, how did you turn these experiences, your identities, how did you use them as your superpower?
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide for yourself that you were going to do this in spite of the way the world saw you, in spite of the spaces where people like you did not exist?
Wow. Wow. So it's, back to the God in me. And I had to catch up with the God in me. I was resilient, tenacious, all of these things, which if people had kind of put it on paper, the youngest of three, I wasn't spoiled, I was catered to. That I kept going where people would have thought, it would have crushed me.
Yeah.
Right? I kept going. And it was my mom and dad, community advocates, right? People were always at our house at that dining room table, and my parents were allowing people to see light and keep going. And so I was very far away from what people envisioned an environmental person actually talking about this form of hazardous waste, tires, right? I was very far removed from that. Back then, I was very much corporate, and so I hadn't brought the funk and the corporate together. So I'm this corporate looking woman, activist, environmentalist that has all of this knowledge around this hazardous waste and talking about innovation. Talking to people globally, meeting at Tech Town with people from Budapest, yet I kept these barriers, right? These barriers. And those barriers exist just because we're in the United States, right? And so it was hurtful, some of the things that people said, some of the gentlemen thinking that, I'm looking for a date and I'm here looking for funding and looking for support to let the world know that innovation continues to come out of this beautiful city. Innovation continues to come out of Black women.
Come on.
Innovation comes out of a formerly quiet, reserved, did not want anyone looking at me. Yet when I aligned with the God in me, I knew I needed to do this for community. I knew I needed to do it for Mrs. Hawk and Mrs. Moore and Mr. Jackson down the street, as well as all the kids, because I don't have any children of my own. So they're all mine. So they all deserve dignified space. They deserve to be free of blight and hazardous things that can engulf in flame and have all of this leaching. And so it in some of those spaces, sis, when I was asked to speak at the North American International Auto Show, that was my very first speaking engagement. And somebody that didn't want to talk in front of people, somebody that I just wanted to do the work. But when that call came in from Chevrolet, and I'm a GM person, my daddy worked for General Motors for 48 years. And so Chevrolet called, and when the call came in, I was on a lunch break, and the lady asked if she could speak to me, and I'm thinking they were calling about a warranty. And she said, well, we've heard about your work. We'd like you to speak at the North American International Auto Show. I'm like, what?
Wow.
Right? And so
what you weren't even looking for.
I wasn't looking for it. And I prepared.
Yeah.
Because I said, I'm supposed to be there. And if Moses stuttered and Most High used Moses to speak to the people, I'll be okay if I get up there and I have a little bit of a time trying to get myself comfortable to let my light shine and let people hear this information about how we need to be better stewards of Mother Earth. So
I'm so grateful that you didn't allow your fear of being seen in space, your fear that had driven you for so long in your life, and that when it was time for you to be in those spaces, you said it's time.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to show up, to articulate the message that is really important for the people to hear. And you did that in part because you knew it was bigger than you. Yes. To hear you name your neighbors in community as a driving force speaks volumes. And sometimes we are the drivers and sometimes the people are the drivers, right? And sometimes it's a little bit of both, right? But there's this inner dance that happens that, there's this quote that I use a lot in my work that when we heal ourselves, right, we do heal the world. But I also think that when we heal the world, we heal ourselves.
Come on. Yes.
And that's the pathway by which ignited this fire in you. And I imagine that from that moment of being on that stage, delivering what you did, you have been moving full speed ahead ever since.
Right. And so that was 2015. So January 2015, 2014, I lost my oldest brother and my mom back to back within 3 weeks of each other, two of my pillars.
Oh my
two
goodness.
Of my three pillars. And so when these calls came in, some of my friends were like, those are your angels, right? They told Chevrolet to call you, right? And so just in preparing for the auto show, I probably said my 5 minutes probably 200 times in the mirror, in the car, whatever. I'm just saying it. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Yet, to your point, it gave me a glimpse because that 5 minutes, I've gone to auto shows my whole life because we're car people, right? I never knew the production it takes for somebody to get up on this stage and talk for 5 minutes. But I saw it all.
Yeah.
I saw it all for those 5 minutes, and here I am.
So this is really important before we get into the next exploration. You said you took a 5-minute speech and you read it 200 times. I need us to hear this, y'all. That when we are feeling called to do something, preparation is everything. And when we work, source works. We do our part, source does the rest, right? That's the magic. That's the part that we can't really put our fingers on always. Now, sometimes we can ask for things and the exact things that we've asked for, they come to fruition. Right. But that's not usually the way that manifestation works. And the fact that you took this opportunity so seriously, you knew, and this whole idea that we get one shot. Now, I think we get lots of shots, but sometimes when those moments present themselves, that is the one shot for that space. And we've got to take the moments, those one shots moments really seriously, because we don't know how that 5 minutes is going to just rock our world and open up unspeakable, unimaginable opportunities. And I imagine that 5 minutes is still paying off to this day.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, because when you and I connected, you said something to me and you said your words touch me, right? And so in preparation, me reciting my 5 minutes over and over again, I said, I'm going to get on the stage and I'm just going to stand in one spot, right? I'm not going to look anyone in the eyes. Well, my style was presented in that. I paced back and forth. I looked people in the eyes as I spoke.
Because that was your authenticity. And if you had shown up, I need us to hear this as well, again, before we get into this next aspiration. If you had shown up with that stoic nature, I'm going to be still, I'm going to recite this, I've got to stay on course, I've got to look refined, I've got to do all of these things, you would have prevented yourself from getting connected to the audience. And only the way that you could do that is if you are in your state of genius. And part of being in our state of genius is the preparation, but it's also allowing ourselves to show up fully. Because that is where the beauty really lies, right? That's where people get inspired, essentially. And so I just love that you knew to do that. You just allowed yourself. And it sounds like even in that moment, the spirit was working through you in that moment.
Oh yeah. And so the other part of it is I have a light heart, right? So I take what I do seriously, right? I have a light heart.
Yeah.
And so any opportunity for, a kiki and a giggle and a good belly laugh.
Come on, let's have a kiki.
Right, right. And so in this, my first speaking engagement, I'm nervous, but I'm going through, I had a moment where God said, daughter, do your thing. I was introducing myself. Audra Carson, born and raised in the city of Detroit, a graduate of arguably the finest high school in the country.
Come on now.
And somebody in the distance said, CT in the house. And I forgot where I was. And I called back, CT in the house.
Yes.
And so that just broke up everything.
Yeah, yeah. That's all you need. And I love how the support that we need is always available.
Always.
The life raft is always available.
Always.
That when we seek, we find. When we ask for support. Yeah. And this is why having moments when we are in stillness is so critically important. This is why knowing that we can ask for support. Yeah. This is why being conscious enough in our spirit so that we can see and hear the way that God is saying, come on, I got you. Yeah. Come on, I got you. You just show up. I need you to show up just a little bit more. Yes. And I got you to help you on this journey. Yes. So that was so rich. Okay. So your parents, as you have already highlighted, they were such strong community advocates. Yes. And they've influenced you a great deal. I don't think there's ever been a time that I've talked to you that your parents have not come up in some shape or form. And so I would love for you to talk about how watching them served as this reservoir of inspiration for you, essentially has impacted the way that you do the work that you do. And so give us a spiel on how your parents played a role in what you're doing now and who you are.
Oh my goodness. So, I don't take it for granted that I grew up in a lighthearted house, right? It was a lot of laughter. I watched my father adore my mother. They were friends, as well as lovers. And so that love that we had in our home, it expanded out to community. Yeah. And so my dad is probably still on the books, although he's transitioned 14200 Block Club for Cloverlawn. He was the president. My mom created junior block clubs on our block and adjacent blocks. Wow. Right. And so, trips to the, Cedar Point and Edgewater Park. We had an amusement park in the city of Detroit called Edgewater. And, so my mother poured into young people, teaching the creation by, I think it was James Weldon Johnson, the creation, teaching that, and drama and all these different elements that she was pouring into the young people. And then, open door policy for not students, but some students, but just neighbor kids to come over and maybe vent about some things that were not so great in their experiences. And my parents never made me feel, as the youngest only girl, that they didn't have enough for me. Yeah. Right. So I watched them dispense love and community, dispense it in our household, dispense it to each other. Yeah. Right. And so it couldn't have been a better example for how I could enter community, and uplift community by having them as my example. And so some of the people who are familiar with my work know that my dad worked with me. He started working with me when he was 82 years old. He was the flyest, coolest dude out there cleaning up litter and debris and working alongside his daughter, right? And so that Ali and Izzie Carson, the examples that they provided for me, when somebody brought it to my attention, they said, you do recognize that you're expanding the work your mom used to do. Wow. The way you show up in community. And then it says, when my brother and I had to clean out the family home, I found a letter from the city of Detroit, and it looked like it had only been opened once. And it was addressed to my mother, and it was thanking my mother for creating the junior block clubs. And it was
outstanding. And the fact that you found that.
Yes.
And I think we have a lot of these moments where we're confronted with a letter or a conversation or something we see on TV, or we're always being nudged to continue. Keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going. And so I have just a quick question for you in relationship to this. You're so fortunate that you had such loving parents who were beacons in the community, who clearly loved you and your siblings, and your brother deeply. And we know that so many people in the world are not given this gift, right? And particularly so many people right here in this great city of Detroit.
Yes.
And so for folks who are listening and saying, gosh, that's really nice for Audra, but I didn't have that. And what piece of inspiration might you have for people, right? Where can they find, knowing that those early years, they may not have been supported the way that you have, which has carried your work forward. Where can people look to have that kind of support that may not exist within familiar connections?
Right. And so, in my work, I'm very conscious of the fact of how fortunate I was, right? And so when I do enter community, although I have this light, and this light I've tried to run from for quite some time, but having this light and not begrudge my light, but acknowledge that people have had some really tough times. And so I suggest that people follow the light. So if it's somebody that catches eyes with you, a stranger, and they say, have a good day.
Queen.
Yeah.
Queen.
King. Have a good day. How is it if a stranger talks to your kid, your child, and you're with them, and they say, you have a beautiful son. He's a handsome young man. And they pour into, allow yourself to let the light in.
Yeah.
I know it might be a little unfamiliar. Let the light in.
Yes.
There are opportunities for us to engage in nature, and you gave such a wonderful data around engaging in nature and green space. And so when we become overcome with all of the mess and the junk and the mire, with everything that's going on with divisiveness and selfishness, steal away, to your green space. Belle Isle is sacred.
Oh my gosh, such a beautiful, and there's so many beautiful green spaces right here in Detroit.
Rouge Park is ginormous in Northwest Detroit. Palmer Park, spaces on the east side. Even if it's the well-cut church up the street, right? And they have the lawn is taken care of, whatever. If you can take some time, if you have a backspace, steal away, breathe, steal away. But there's light all around us.
Follow the light.
Follow the light.
This is so simple and yet so profound. And I read a research report recently from Wallet Hub that said that Detroit ranks the lowest when it comes to happiness. And, I've been here the last 6 months.
Yes.
And I said, oh, I get it. I get it now. There's brilliance, there's creativity, but this is a community that has endured immense hardship.
Yes.
Neighborhoods that have been literally nearly obliterated.
Yes.
Right? The extracting that's been done to take away from Detroit, this narratives that have been imbalanced about the stories that have been told.
Yeah.
And what I love about what you just said, Queen, is that we all have light. But oftentimes, personal trauma, community trauma, it will rob us from the light.
Yes.
And if we're careful, we won't be able to see the light.
Yes.
And so I love that you're inviting us to think about the simple ways that light shows up, from seeing that person on the street to everywhere, because
Yes.
God is in everything and
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
And one of the ways that we can commune with God, universe, source, creation is to be in nature.
Yes.
And nature, for those listeners who don't know this, it helps the body to heal itself.
Yes.
Without any other kind of intervention, just being immersed, even in artificial environment where nature is the baseline for it, will do what it needs to do to trick the brain.
Yes.
To have the body have the effects of it. We don't get the phytochemicals, right?
Yeah.
But we do get the benefits that nature provides in slowing us down.
Yes.
When we slow down, we get to hear God, universe, source speak. We get to know ourselves. To know ourselves is to know God.
Yes.
And so follow the light.
Follow the light.
Oh my gosh. We might have to call this episode Follow the Light. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see, Queen. Okay. So as we get ready to wrap up, I want to talk a little bit about strategic beautification. You have a very unique approach, which I believe is very sustainable when it comes to beautifying neighborhoods, to bringing community together, to bringing people together for the greater good of the beauty that exists and the beauty that we are going to create within this space.
Yes.
So talk to us about the emotional and psychological well-being of residents that are engaged with your work. Like, what do you see happens for people when you're in conversation with them, when they're a part of creating solutions based on this very unique approach that you have to beautification? And particularly when we're talking about Detroit's dominant BIPOC neighborhoods and communities.
Okay, wonderful. So strategic beautification, it came from my little cousin, little sister, right? Tanisha, we talk a few times a week, and I was, licking my wounds from, continuing to have to pivot, as a business owner. And so, I was thinking about, not moving forward with Izzie as a company anymore. And my cousin's like, "You've named that after Auntie, you have to keep going." And she said, you're a beautification strategist. And she said, the strategy, cousin, is that you have these relationships.
Yeah.
And you have a really strong network.
Mm-hmm.
It's deep and it's wide. And you bring these different relationships together to expand your work. Your work becomes exponential because of these relationships and trust that you've built through the years. And so with the strategy is keep this thing going, right? And uplift and coming from Detroit, and it was, hazardous waste to we're in community that has been brutalized by disinvestment, right? The trauma of having to watch your elementary school deteriorate before your eyes, and then it be demolished, right? So those type of buildings, 115 schools, Detroit public schools, were closed.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's just one piece of what has happened. Neighborhoods, the intentional dismantling of the city that had the largest amount of homeowners, Black homeowners in the country. So when people come and they ride through neighborhoods, they didn't always look like that. So when the narrative was, Detroit was, fill in the blank of how what people would describe Detroit as. This isn't decades, the mortgage meltdown, right? And all of that. It was intentional. The predatory lending, intentional to dismantle these neighborhoods. And so you had neighborhoods that have been struggling for decades and almost my lifetime, but then other neighborhoods because of this disinvestment. And so when I come into community, right? I come in and I learn because
Yeah.
each community has its own culture. Even though I've been here
Mm.
all my 59 years, I come into community. How can I help?
Yeah.
What can I do? So if a business is coming to me and they want to hire me, what are your pain points, right?
Mhm.
What are the pain points as it relates to environment and space, the
Yeah.
public shared space? Well, here's what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do this and help tell your story. So I tell the story, I educate.
Mm-hmm.
Picking up litter is just not picking up litter. We're stopping it from going to the storm drains. We're stopping the potential for microplastics that will go into our watershed and eventually get into our lakes, streams, rivers, right? I educate around that, right?
You're creating stewardship.
Yes.
You're creating stewardship, and I think in a way that goes beyond the traditional ways that we create stewardship, like helping people to make these connections and knowing that when neighborhoods are clean,
Yes,
we feel better.
people feel better.
The vibration changes.
Right.
We want to be in these spaces.
Right.
We have a greater stake in these spaces. Yes. And so often, and what you just named, Audra, is about cultural humility. You said, gosh, I have lived in this community my whole life, and yet, there is no way that I can know everything about every neighborhood. And my job is to let the people to be the experts in their communities, which creates a collaborative relationship. And I imagine then people have a stake and they want to show up and they want to play their part.
Right. And so reaction. So if people work for me, we do dignified work, right? So I'm gonna have on my uniform. I'm gonna be out there with them. You know, I'm gonna be a little fly.
Yeah,
right, with my,
you always fly. I have never seen you not fly, my sister.
Well, thank you. So even doing this work, right? I'm gonna have on a uniform. They're gonna have on their Izzie vests. We're dignified people doing dignified work, right? For dignified people.
Come on.
So we get thumbs up. We get people walking by. Thank you. The first woman I hired, we did the pilot on 6 Mile in Livernois, also known as McNichols.
Yeah.
And the woman came out. We were doing the pilot on a Friday, and she came out and she said, "Are you the young lady that cleaned up the lot at the end of my block?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She hugged me and she rocked me. And she said, "Thank you. I didn't think anybody cared about us."
I felt that.
Yeah.
And I think that so oftentimes people do feel written off. People do have apathy because they feel as if they have no power to change the trajectory of their lives. Yes. And even when the way you greeted her, "Yes, ma'am," there's dignity in that. They're saying, "I see you and I recognize that you are my elder. And I am in this community with you. And we are side by side in this. And I'm honoring you and your position in this world." Wow. So simple and yet so profound.
Getting back, reminding us our communities were not, lawlessness and disrespect. There was order and community.
And lawless and disrespect, right, is a manifestation of trauma.
Yes.
Because eventually when people are not seen and heard, it's got to go somewhere. People do all kinds of things to survive. And so, in the trauma world, one of the things that we say is not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
What happened?
And so I love that you're saying we're going back to our roots.
Right.
This is actually not our natural design.
Right.
And so let me help to create a pathway by which we can get there together. So that we can create the kind of world that we are truly worthy of.
Right. And just to expand on that, the removal of the tree canopy in our communities. Okay. When you talk about people reacting to their conditions, and so you think about communities getting hotter and hotter and hotter. It's people in the house. Everybody can't afford window air conditioners and central air, whatever. You're hot. I know when I'm hot, I can get outside of myself.
Come on now, we can
right?
all be out of
Right.
pocket.
Right. And so if you have a community that's already been stripped of resources, and we know the earth is heating up,
Mm-hmm.
the sun is blazing on these communities, people do what they have to do, right?
Yeah,
To survive, right? And so
absolutely.
is no that when I use the word lawlessness, but the hurting of each other and all of that stuff.
No, I knew exactly what you meant, right? I knew exactly what you were naming. And I imagine that in concert with what you have just raised, right? We don't talk about this in the context of climate change. What's happening to the people as a result, particularly people in urban communities such as Detroit.
Yes.
And so I love that you're naming this and that your work is countering it. And I want the world to pay more attention to this, right? Because it's not just about being good to the environment for environment's sake. It's about being good to the environment for the people's sake,
for the
too.
People's sake.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good. All right. So for listeners who are currently dealing with their own trauma, what practical steps outside of all the things that you gave about being in nature would you suggest for them to begin transforming themselves? Which, as we know, equates to transforming the world, or vice versa.
For sure.
What advice do we have for them to heal the trauma of their communities so that then they can also do the healing work on themselves?
So a couple different ways, right? So Detroit, our water, people come from around the world to see how we treat our water, right? And so, bottled water isn't the answer, right? We have tap water that is some safe.
Sure.
Okay. Hydrate.
That's real simple.
Hydrate.
And yet we don't do it. We're not drinking water as much as we need to.
Hydrate.
This is why my skin looks the way it does. Now, of course, I'm wearing lip bar right now.
Hydrate.
But if this lip bar wasn't on, my skin would really be popping.
Come on now.
Okay, without this makeup.
And I'm a lip bar girl too. So
I see your skin.
Right.
You've been hydrating.
we must hydrate.
Yes.
And get back to some things. Remembering. Right? Hydrating will allow you to center yourself and address your own humanity, right? And so when you can address your own humanity outside of what has happened to you and what things that you may have harmed others, harm to you or harm to others, hydrating gets you back, gets your body to do what it's designed to do. Okay.
So I love this. Before you give us some other simple tips, one of the reasons why I love this is because accessibility to wellness, as you know, is one of the missions of Be Well Beautiful People. And when I think about accessibility, it's not just about money. It's about the practices, right? And keeping it simple. And what just occurred to me is that water is a purifier. And that oftentimes, if we're not drinking water, even when we wake up in the morning, if we're supposed to drink water within 30 minutes of getting up because it resets everything.
Yes.
And so if we're not drinking enough water, this very simple thing, it is affecting every single major organ system in our body.
Correct.
And if we're not putting water in our body, what are we putting in? And usually we're putting in things that have artificial flavors and colors. And we know all of the ramifications that happen to people, all the science that's starting to show that our brains are connected to our guts. And so if we're not putting in water, then we are poisoning ourselves in some shape or form, or we're not getting the proper nutrients that we need to be able to cleanse everything that we're putting into our body. So I just love the simplicity of this.
Right. And then not to dilute the struggles around water access.
Yes.
Not to dilute the work, that we the people is doing as it relates to water access. Water should be a human right. Water shutoffs and all those things is astronomical, and it's disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, so leaving room for that and making room for
Yes.
that is a reality for so many of our community members. So,
And that's part of that environmental justice work,
yes.
right? Because we need to make sure that we have access to the basic needs. I
Yes.
love, yes, it is a birthright. I just came back from Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Zambia. And, like you're in villages where people don't have access to clean water.
Yeah.
But we're in the States where people's water is being cut off.
Right.
We're talking about the same basic phenomena.
Yes.
Right? Who has access and who doesn't?
Who has access? Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, good. Okay. Give us some more tips, Queen.
So with that water allowing you to acknowledge your own humanity, and then the humanity in others, and so taking that a bit further, the light in you and the light in others, and so could it be your children, their light, and maybe just taking some breathing and taking a moment to pause from always reacting.
Yeah.
Just take a beat.
We all need to take a lot of beats. A lot more beats.
Right. And another beat. And another beat. Right? And slow down.
Because we don't have to respond right away.
We don't have to.
Right? I used to believe that I had to respond to everything when it came my way. And I didn't realize how much that was affecting me adversely, how much that was taking away my own power, how much it was preventing me from seeing what is actually a yes, what's actually a no. What do I feel obligated to do versus inspired to do, right? Our truth is connected in the pause, and acting from a place of love is very much connected to the pause.
Yes, and so that pause allows you clarity. That pause allows you to have vision. And so that light, you connect with the light in me, I connect with the light in you. And so taking that pause allows you to disconnect, right? We're connected to all of this technology, right? And if we take some time to disconnect, right, and not be in this mode of wanting to defend, right? Defend yourself, defend it, politically, religion, all of these things that divide, right? Taking that time for yourself allows you to acknowledge you're more than a check mark. You're
more than a political belief.
You're more than a political belief. You're
more than somebody who's supposed to serve the world and be we are more.
Right. We're more.
And we get to the more when we create stillness.
Yes.
I often say in my work that if you want to fast track your evolution, the greatest way that you can do that is by creating space. Yes. You want the next big idea. Yeah. You want the answer to the question. Right. You want to get clear about who you are and what you want. Yeah. There's power in the stillness.
There's power in the stillness.
Oh my gosh. This conversation has been I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the work. I'm grateful that God, universe, source, creator saw fit to bring us together at this time in this way. Yes. And I know for sure that people have been touched by you, just as I have. So talk to the audience about how they can stay in touch with you, because I know for sure they're going to want to.
Okay, wonderful. Instagram is the best way. Izzie Global, Izzie Global. You can message me. Facebook is the same. And I'm always open to be available for community, available for people who just want to, tap back into their humanity.
Yeah.
And how do you meld that with nature, living in an urban space? I'm open to have those conversations to help people uplift their spaces.
Yeah. So I love that. So I'm going to be talking to you soon, because I've got this retreat center that's going to be coming down the pipeline. And I know there is much that you can lend in terms of your expertise just based on how we can do it in the most environmentally friendly way.
Yes.
And that is truly connected to what the people want. And so thank you, my queen. It
Thank
has
you.
been a sheer pleasure. My heart
Yes.
is full from this conversation today.
Yes.
And audience, we want to thank you. Our deepest, deepest gratitude for being with us today. We hope that the insights that we shared have opened up new pathways towards your healing and your overall liberation. If we can be of service on your journey, please don't hesitate to reach out. Be sure to tune in for the 8 other episodes on the Alchemizing Trauma for Community Impact series and the 100 plus additional episodes we have on the Be Well Beautiful People podcast. If you found value in today's show us some love. You can do that by telling everybody that you know about this podcast. You can rate us on YouTube, along with whatever podcast platform that you're listening on. You're also welcome to share your thoughts anytime at info@bewellbeautifulpeople.org. And if you haven't picked up my book, Me Too, A Therapist's Journey to Heal, Find Liberation and Joy, I invite you to do so at DemarraWest.com. You can use code ALCHEMIZING to save 25% off. The Be Well Beautiful People podcast is sponsored by The Love Building, a subsidiary of Allied Media Project and home for the social justice and creative community right here in this great city of Detroit. We're also supported by H&B Building Services, who provide top-notch, reliable building services to fulfill all of your personal and professional needs. And lastly, we're being supported by the amazing, locally owned and operated The Lip Bar. Y'all got to check them out if you haven't already. My go-to lipstick, which I'm not wearing today, is Prom Queen. So check that out and all of their other amazing colors to help you to be as beautiful as you choose to be. We're going to leave you with the words of David Orr. When we heal the earth, we heal ourselves. Until next time, beautiful people. Ashe.